a very strong drive to improve, a very big commitment to just grow. There's a lot of commitment, I would say. Everyone in the middle of that is dealing with shame, guilt, and many things related to, depending on the program that they're in, their sexual integrity and their relationship with sexuality, everything that comes with that. What I see a lot of it is that sisters want to improve. They want to have a better relationship with themselves, with sexuality, and with God. It always ends up going up to God in the end. I feel very proud because I do see that the sisters, the girls are really doing their best.
Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times of ours. In today's episode, everybody, we have a special guest who's a lady. That's right. We know women. We actually have many women in High Noon. We have chapter leaders. We are diverse. Just trust me on that. But Araceli's actually been a G. She's been a woman G who's helped to pioneer Female Ascend and the female programs, right? And so she wanted to talk about identity, and thank God she did, because we had a really great conversation about identity and how much that factors in to your journey in developing sexual integrity, but also in terms of understanding the past. You got to sort through the past in order to create the future, and your future is largely dictated by who you believe you are and what you're capable of, and that's identity. And so we get into the weeds, but it was a really great conversation. I learned a lot. I'm sure you will too. So please welcome Benji and I welcoming Araceli to this podcast. And guess what? You're welcome. We have a lot of faces on the screen right now, everybody.
We have.
I hope it's not too much beauty for you to handle. Some people might faint. You know, like in some cartoons, it's like a lot of flashing animation and they warn you about seizures.
Mm-hmm.
You may have a seizure with all this beauty. I'm just saying. There's a lot of beauty on this face.
Goodness.
Yes. Araceli is here. We have a special guest, a lady, everybody. High Noon knows
Hello.
females. Hey, welcome.
Woohoo.
And High Noon employs females. Diversity people. Yeah. But Araceli, you are not an individual. Let's just admit that. You've somehow skewed the demographics and are 2-in-1. You're a 2-in-1 package. Can you do a reveal for anybody who might not know?
I'm pregnant.
Hey.
I'm pregnant. I'm waiting for a baby.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
you are super
girl.
Pregnant. Another girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like less than 2 weeks, the due date?
Yes, on the 16th. We're close to the due date. We're about to pop her out.
By the time you listen to this, we will have another second Araceli, second coming.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Well, congrats. She's living the High Noon life, everybody. That's what happens when you live the High Noon life. You pop out children and life begins.
Definitely.
And so what happens in Latin America when you have a kid? Do you dance a lot? Is there a lot of dancing? I just picture everything has something to do with dancing and fun.
No, I don't think so. Just regular pregnancy, regular labor, and then you rest.
But you eat a lot of asado.
As much as you can.
Okay.
Well, yeah, every Sunday. That's tradition.
Saying. If you haven't been to Argentina, you don't know what meat is. You don't know. But then if you go to Uruguay, then you find yourself in this very awkward situation where you're in this war of people who say that they know what meat is, but it's actually delicious in both places. Let's just admit it.
Yeah.
So you
are
are
other countries.
Yeah, it's the mate tea war. Who's got the best yerba mate and then who's got the best asado is really too much for a foreigner to handle. We just want everybody to win.
Yeah, you can say both are good, and that's okay.
Yeah, peacemakers. And so you are like you've been dealing with women, right? In terms of like high noon in the woman's world, which thank you by the way, because for the longest time it was just something people like you should have more stuff for women, and we're like, yeah, we know, we're trying. We don't know who to stand up on behalf of women, and you have been right. So how's the world of women? First of all, just quick catch up.
Oh, what a question.
In
What a
the
big
high noon
question.
women world, is it is
Yeah,
it are you seeing any trends or anything progress? How's it going?
I see a lot of a very strong drive to improve, to like a very big commitment um to just grow. And
Mm.
yeah, there's a lot of commitment, I would say, and to really try to understand oneself. And there's a lot of everyone in the middle of that is dealing with shame, guilt, and many things related to depending on the program that they're in, their sexual integrity and their relationship with sexuality, and everything that comes with that. uh, so trends, what I see a lot of it is that the sisters want to improve. They want to have a better relationship with themselves, with sexuality, and with God. It
Mhm.
always ends up going up to God in the end. And um, yeah, I feel very proud because I do see that the sisters, the girls, are really doing their best
Mhm.
to find their way to then eventually, at some point, their blessings.
Hey,
Yeah.
to their babies.
Yes, babies.
Uh, and then where does identity come into that? Because that's something, you have a heart to open up conversations for more women to be part of. And
Hmm.
of all the things that you could, when you searched your heart to think of, like what is like a really pressing issue, identity stood out to you. So what is it about
Yeah.
identity? What is this breakdown?
Yeah. So many of my conversations with the girls have been about discovering who they are at the same time that they are working on recovery, on improving their relationships with the ideal of sexuality. They As they work on that, they realize, actually, I don't know who I am, right? I don't
Mm,
know really what I want, or I don't have a clear idea of what is my vision, right? All of these things are part of identity of who they are. And in the most practical sense, they don't know what makes them truly happy. They don't know what makes them truly fulfilled, for example. And so as they go through the program, as we have reflections with them, and they do their work, um, they start unpacking who they really are, who they want to be as well, right? And uh, and yeah, it just surprised me. Like, this is part of the job of recovery, right? But it just surprised me how um, buried deep underneath themselves their true self were, and all the work that they needed to do to really connect with who they really are, outside of their shame, outside of their guilt, outside of all of that negative things that they were dealing with as they were working on their recovery from unwanted sexual habits, especially with the sisters working in the Ascent program. So identity became something that we're talking about every week, basically.
mm,
And for them to really make the effort and work to uncover who they are, who they want to be, and work on that. Yeah. So so yeah, that's why identity has been such a big thing. And as they work on that, they realize that whatever issues they were working on,
mm,
whatever bad habits they had, that was disconnecting them from who they were, right? And
I
so,
want to unpack that because I don't understand. I understand, but I think there's a lot of blank spaces that I'm filling in with assumptions here. So, like,
okay.
imagine, like, in a practical way, you have a sister. I mean, somebody who's joining, let's say, Ascend. Let's start with that, and then
Hmm.
core, separate thing. But yeah, you have these unwanted sexual habits. They join to be like, I'm watching porn. I don't want to, or I'm involved in like masturbation. It doesn't feel right. I feel estranged from myself. How does identity play into that in terms of like, it's such an external thing, seemingly, right? For a lot of people, it's like, I just want to get rid of this external thing. So, how does identity factor into that in any way?
Well, so porn or masturbation and any of these bad habits really go against um, who you, the concepts of who you that you have about yourself, right? They really go against a lot of values that you hold, and that's why people feel shame, right, and guilt because they are engaging in something that really is against who they say they are. Um, but as the more they get involved in this bad habit, the more they need to cope with the idea that they're doing something that they don't like, actually, that they feel shameful about. And so they start ignoring themselves. They start like um, hiding from themselves so that they don't feel the shame or the guilt that comes with doing something that they know is not good for them. And so the more you engage with that, the more time passes with this habit, um, the more you disengage with yourself, the more you disconnect, from yourself. And so when you decide to really change, to stop engaging in this behavior, it allows, it gives you the space to then discover and rediscover who you are, to unpack where were you all that time that you were hiding from yourself because you were afraid of your own shame, your own guilt.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Does
What's
it?
that bringing
Would
up
you
for
say
you,
that people
Benji?
are?
Yeah.
Would you say that sisters that you talk with or in our programs are confused about their identity?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they don't even under when I ask you, like, they don't even understand the idea or the concept of identity, right? And how is it connected to all these things that we're talking about,
Sure.
for example, right?
Yeah. I have a question about
Yeah.
kind of the cause. So I have two girls, two daughters. Daughters, I should be clear, not two girls. I have a wife and two girls, two little girls.
So
The
three
girls are,
girls.
yes, the girls are 35 years old, 8 years old, and 3 years old. And so,
Yeah.
as a dad of girls, I prioritize mostly being with them, spending time with them, hugging them, listening to them, especially at night before bed, and just like goofing around and being a kind of stable presence with them. But also am not a woman, so I'm kind of in the dark here trying to figure this out. So I guess my question is, how does a sister, how does a woman become confused and about their identity, or come to a place where they don't know who they are and they don't know where they're going, to the point that they are like, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. I need guidance, to the extent that they don't feel like their parents, perhaps, because I'm assuming a lot of the sisters don't feel like their parents have given them the sufficient support that they're really wanting, right, to figure this stuff out.
Hmm.
I don't know. So do you have anything on that?
Yeah. Um, I think partly is that they haven't felt the freedom, I guess, or the space, the safe space to um, be who they are and discover, I guess, more about who they are in a healthy way, in a safe environment, because a lot of them, they come with this concept of this is the good daughter, the good sister, the good
Mm-hmm.
woman that I need to be, and that is the standard. And in the middle of that, for one reason or the other, usually because they start engaging in some sort of habit that they know is not the best, but they don't feel safe to go to their parents to about that. um, they start that's where the confusion begins, and because they know that there's this ideal that they should be striving towards and that they are actually striving towards, and at the same time they're dealing with other things that they hide from their parents, from themselves, from, and they don't feel like they can go to a different, to like an uncle or auntie, or an elder sister. And so as they hide that, they start, creating these two lives, uh, that ends up confusing a lot, about who they are, about what they want to do, and
Hmm.
and yeah, and a lot of them don't feel safe to explore, like what are the different things that they enjoy doing, in a healthy way. Doesn't have to go into like risky behavior necessarily, right? To explore,
Yeah.
um, what do you like doing, what do you enjoy doing, what do you want to do in your life in the future. It's like different hobbies, different, um, likes and dislikes, different flavors of things, ice cream, whatever. It's like they don't even explore these things. And I think partly the reason is because they don't feel like it's something that they could do, or they don't have that space provided by their surroundings to do it.
That's a big one because at a certain point, like when you're a little kid, Benji, like you're little kids, their identity is based off of their feedback that they're getting largely from you and your wife, right? And their worldview is being fed to them by parents. And then at a certain point, they start to question all that. And then they're
Hmm.
offered a consortium of ideas from movies. This is who you are, right? From
Mhm.
culture, this is who you
Hmm.
are. From their friends, this is who you are. And so that's when people start jumping ship and doing trends, like at around
Yeah.
13, my identity shifted from the shy boy to like, I want to be the funny guy. So then I really worked hard at that, right? And because that's who I was kind of choosing things. But in the end, it leaves people with this mixed identity between, and especially when they're young adults, it seems like they start to reject the past. In the West right now, that's a big thing, is flushing the past down the
Mhm.
toilets. My parents are idiots. And if you look at most TV shows, it suggests that you should do this as a good option. Like parents don't know what they're talking about. Reject everything that you learned as a kid. That's all wrong. Your parents are broken. And just figure out who you are, right? And so I was mentioning that the movie, the uh, the K-pop Demon Hunters, was a really good movie, but it also leaves a lot of interpretation to be like, I was born like this, so therefore you just need to celebrate this, and that could mean a lot of different things. And people are doing this in America a lot these days, which is like,
Mhm.
um, this whatever I feel must be true, regardless of where do these feelings come from. Why do I feel this way? Not understanding it, but just running with it is then your
Mhm.
identity. So your feelings are
Yeah.
your identity, and your feelings change all the time. So that just leaves you with multiple personalities, which is quite dangerous. But so with all
Yeah.
that said, I'm very curious as to how we can offer people some insight in terms of like how do they know what's their true identity. Because I think
Mm.
us, we believe in God, would say something like your true identity lies in God. That's a very broad thing to say and not always so helpful, because it's what every
Mhm.
pastor would say, what every religious person would say. But what does it mean? Okay, my identity is God-like. Okay, so what about my anger? Is that part of my identity, or do I need to get rid of it? Do I need to channel it? What about my proclivities, right? My curiosity, because some religious
Mm.
people might say, don't be curious, right? But is curiosity a bad thing, right? So how do I would like for us to like really go there and figure out how to offer wisdom to people who are figuring out who is my true self, like what is my identity, how do they sort through the pressures from parents, pressures from friends, pressures from culture, and figure out who they truly are.
Yeah. That's a good place to go to now.
Let's go. Well, I mean, you guys were both born in a religious environment, right?
Mhm.
You are known as second generation, so you didn't even you get to choose your faith. It was given to you, right? And there's plenty
Yeah.
of people online that use that as their excuse for being, I was born in a cult, or I was born in a religion, or I was born, my parents forced me to believe this. But you guys are still around and you still believers. So how do you sort through that kind of stuff? Like, why did you go to the blessing, both of you, instead of some alternate path? Let's
Yeah.
start with that, because that's more
Well,
in like the high noon realm. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
For me, the idea of you're born to something is a stronger indicator for your belief in faith more than your own desire is kind of ludicrous. Like we've been, like human beings have been being born into religion for thousands of years. This is not a new thing. Does that make sense? Like we feel
Sure.
like this is some new age, only a specific movement, and somehow we're, uh, yeah, delusion to think that we're some special unicorn that we're born to fit. Like we've been doing that forever. There are like hundreds of generations of Christians or Muslims, right? Or all types of religions. So I'm a believer that we, in some ways, if you're born into something, you have to have a stronger conviction in it over the long term, because if everything is handed to you, like then it's easier to take that and be irresponsible with it and not know how to wield it. Like if you're given a bunch of money, for example, instead of working for it, you're more likely to lose it. And so I think if you've been given faith without a fight for it or a clear, decisive decision to own it, you're more likely to lose that faith because it's not based in conviction. Maybe in the beginning years, like you're a teenager and maybe you're just getting into a relationship, just getting blessed, right? But after decades and decades of being blessed and married and having children, you're going to need some grit and some actual resilience in your own faith. And so for me, it's honestly, it's a constant, perpetual curiosity to understand more about God, about faith, about who true parents are, what the blessing is.
Hmm.
And I think because I have that curiosity. I don't know what it is. Like I can see that in myself. If I hear some news, like True Mother said this, or this religious leader said this or did that, my immediate thought is like trying to understand, like why are they saying that? Not from a pessimistic point of view, more like an optimistic. Maybe there's a reason for that. Or even if like a religious figure makes a mistake, like a sexual mistake or has an affair or anything like that, my first reaction is usually like, oh, interesting. I wonder why that happened. I wonder what led them down that path. And I think because I have this natural curiosity to understand spiritual things, it's kind of served me well in the long run, because the default is always, well, maybe there's something I don't understand. That's like my kind of default understanding. Maybe I'm not seeing the whole picture of what the spiritual implications might be.
Hmm.
So I think that's it. Is like just being curious, and maybe that's something that I inherited from my parents. But I think I'm just naturally curious, right?
But what I heard kind of in the background of what you were saying was that ideas need to be tested, right? So if you're born into a faith that you don't accept it or reject it, you test it, right? And I think that that's something that very few people do, because we're asked to pick a side. Are you in or are you out? And that's religion, but with your friend group as well. Like, are you with us or not? And you don't get many opportunities to challenge things in a healthy way. Like in our society, you say the word LGBT and you're forced to one of two reactions, because that's the only thing. But how much healthier is it for us to unpack point by point what is being proposed here? What do we need to understand? Like there's something that both sides clearly misses when they're just shouting at each other, right?
Yeah.
But it's true of your identity as well. Is there a lot of who we present ourselves to be is based on assumptions and like half-baked ideas, or unfinished emotions that we try to round out with action. But instead, like, to have people that challenge us, and that we can challenge our ideas and our feelings, and so that we can understand them. Because a lot of what yeah, like, you can't claim ownership over anything unless like you said, Benji, kind of earned it. If you just inherit it, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily the owner, not by any real measure, right? So like,
Yeah.
in order to be the owner, you have to know what it is that you own, and you can't know it unless you've spent some time learning about it and working
Right.
for it. And in terms of identity, it's the same thing as like, what part of your identity is just laziness? Like, oh, I no, my identity is I'm just like a really negative, pessimistic person. Well, maybe that's just how you've stayed safe your whole life, because you don't have to believe in stuff, because it's easier to just be the nego everywhere you are. But it doesn't mean that that's how you have to be. You could try. And so like challenging these things is uh I think the best way, but it's like it's the most inconvenient way to find out who you really are, because it's a lot easier just to make some assumptions and say, this is who I am, accept me. And now it's like, accept me fully as a, even though I'm going to change tomorrow, accept that version of me fully. And like, I'm a fully complete person today, but I'm going to change tomorrow, and accept me fully as a fully complete person, even though I'm going to change the day after that. It's like, that doesn't work. That's what the young generation is demanding, even though they're a work in progress. So it's either one or the other. It's like, either that's the totality of you, and we have to accept you forever, and then you better be unchanging, and it better work out. Or you could take a reasonable approach and be like, look, I'm a work in progress, and you can challenge and iterate based on what actually works, right? And then become that.
Yeah.
And then your identity becomes a work in progress.
Hey, I wanted to let you know about the Radiant program. What's the Radiant program? If you are a young blessed couple that was blessed in marriage sometime in the last few years, then this program is just for you. It is a couples intimacy program for young couples, and you can join with your spouse, you can join without your spouse. We've got group discussions and community for men and women separate, and also we have opportunities for you and your couple to dive deeper into God's word, into the word of true parents, and learn how to experience an absolute sex relationship. So if that's you and you want to join, check out somewhere in this video, in this episode, and below, or go to highnoon.org to check it out. All right, hope to see you there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more and more important for us as humanity to test our identity, to test our ideas and our beliefs. It's something that naturally happened through like rituals, and like that's the whole idea of rite of passage, is that you are now your own man, woman. You need to test your own strength. And there's even like my mom was always, when I was growing up, my mom always told me about the Amish community. They have this rite of passage kind of at 16 where they stop enforcing a lot of the rules, and they basically let teens wander the world, go to the city, do whatever they want. And they have a very, very high return rate of people that come back. And that when they're like 18 to 21 years old, they do like a baptism within the church, and they have officially signed off and said, okay, I'm committing to this. Right.
And then they
so
get the haircut.
the haircut. Yeah. And it's their kind of rite of passage. I'm sure they have other rite of passage, but I think that one's a cool one because it's an intentional way to test our beliefs. And I think that life is, I mean, especially in, if you're listening to this and you live in a first world country or second world country, it's becoming more and more easy to just kind of go along with the flow of culture in society and what everyone is doing. It's like a cookie cutter life. And so there's not a natural way, there's not a baked in cultural across the board method for testing our ideas like a rite of passage. And so we kind of have to wing it. We kind of have to make it up on our own, like as families. And I think that can apply not just for like faith in general, but any ideas we have or anything that we want to hold true and really test ourselves. I think we can do those in micro ways. And I think even microwaves, yeah, in microwaves, you throw your idea in a microwave and you nuke
just
it.
To be clear,
you just nuke it. No, like healthy debate, for example. I think that's a very small way that can really test you in some, because you're having conversations with the same people, with the same church, with the same family members about the same topics. You're not really going to be testing anything. But if you go to, I don't know, I'm not going to endorse going to the bar or go somewhere that you'd never go to, right? You don't usually
Mhm.
typically hang out, and you just like have conversations about. I've had a conversation with a guy covered in tattoos at a gym, and I thought that was like a super fruitful discussion for me because I was like, I don't help me understand the tattoos because I don't get it. And I told him point blank, like, I don't understand why someone would cover himself with tattoos, right? Like that
Mm.
kind of conversation. I've had a few of those like that, and it's always so fruitful because then you stop seeing them as, you know, painful, in pain, degenerate people, but you start seeing them as humans that have lived life exactly like I have lived life, but just in a different environment and different upbringing, different family, etc. So just
Mm.
testing small conversations, like I think it's a beautiful way to kind of see where identity is. And I think what Hainun and Araceli, what you're doing with the programs is actually giving people an opportunity to share and to be tested. And like, what do I really believe? Do I really believe this? And ultimately, where do I want to go with this information?
Mm.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I would say, especially for those that are shy, that wouldn't go and approach somebody to ask and understand about that.
Right.
In and also like in my case, I remember at the beginning, when I was younger, I wasn't too curious about understanding more than I already understood. Like, I already grew up with divine principle, everything seemed fine, and nothing seemed like needed to be tested at that moment, when I was
Mm.
younger. But as I was, my teenage years, the rebel years as we call them here, I started testing my those ideas with my parents because they allowed it, right? Not everyone has that opportunity. I know I'm privileged in that sense. And I would start debating my parents with what they had shared with me, with what they had educated me on in terms of divine principle and, all that entails about what is the purpose of life and the three blessings and all of these things that we do, right? And I started questioning those things to them, and that developed into then having the foundation of feeling like very stable in my faith, in my beliefs, in my ideas. And so I was able to clearly decide, I believe in this, I like this, I want that, I don't want this other thing that I've seen outside in my friends, in society, and all these things, right? And I was able to clearly say that to myself. I don't want marriage outside of my church. I want a blessing because X, Y, and Z. And I was able to say that to myself because I was having discussions about it with my parents, with my brothers, with my, with even with friends sometimes. But
Yeah.
um, the one thing that I would that happens a lot with in my conversations with my mentees and the participants is that they don't question that. They don't question why they want the blessing, for example. They don't question why do they want to be a good person or any of this, right? And in the end, they just say because of my parents, because of God, because God said so, right? And even
Yeah.
that doesn't feel satisfying for them, right? They're just following this thing. And so I question them, right, to reflect on, if you want the blessing, considering what the blessing is, why, right? And if you want to be a better person, why? And it seems like in the end, everyone wants something that is going to be good for them and for
Mm.
others, right? That ends up being the drive for for why they decide things in their lives, about their identity, about who they want to be, about what is their vision. And so when they approach questioning things from that perspective, I want things in my life that are going to bring me good things, that are going to bring me a good environment, that are going to bring good to other people as well. When they have that um, identified, that is the reason that drives them, then they can start challenging these ideas and understand that they want the blessing, or they want, I don't know, they want to become a missionary because they want to do good, right? And that is part of their identity, right? And they
Mm.
start uncovering these values that they are actually really governed by, right? That they want, but that they want it because they decided, not because their parents decided, not because
Yeah.
God said so.
Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely. When you see somebody who, yeah, comes into our world, and I know Benji was hot on this for a while, where if somebody said, well, I want to, get my sexual integrity in order for my future spouse, he always dogs them on that, because he's like, that's not a reason. That's like, it's for somebody else. Then your identity
Mm,
is based on somebody else, rather than like, why do you do this in the first place, right?
yeah.
And I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I just went off on this metaphor that I didn't have any tools at my disposal, so I had to use my hand a lot for this, right? But it's like, this is your true self, and then when we go off on a tangent, when we deviate, little by little over time, we end up feeling so far away from our ideal self. And so when people meet us, they're like way off over here. They're very uncomfortable. They're so not themselves that they don't even like themselves or like being themselves. So they have to escape themselves. That's where most people are when they
Mhm.
meet us. That's where I think most people are in general. And then after maybe a couple months, maybe a couple cycles in one of our programs, they expect to be here, right? And they're like, I don't know if this is working. And it's like, you were way off over here and you want to be straight here. It's like, the path isn't to go bloop and to be right vertical. It's, you have to go through no man's land or no woman's land, which is like, you don't even know who you are. You know who you don't want to be. Okay, great. But you don't even know who this person is. And in order to get back to be vertically aligned with the person you're meant to be, you have to kind of have, I said, it's like, you have a very low resolution picture of the identity of your true self. That every time you set a North Star goal and say, okay, how would my true self wake up? How would they eat? How would they, connect with other people? How would they use their phone? You're creating more resolution, and you're figuring that out. And so you're going through this phase where it doesn't quite feel like your true self yet, and you have a lot of questions, but you feel further away from the disaster of a person that you were, but you're not quite who you want to be. And that process can take a while. It's different for every person, but it just became that was an identity statement that, like, um we can all really clearly list things that we don't like about ourselves. It's a lot
Mm,
harder to
yeah.
find attributes about ourselves that we say, oh, this is of God, without that coming straight from the ego. I think a lot of guys would be like, I'm great because I can do this and that. It's like, yeah, chill. I mean, like, really deep down, like the bone marrow of our soul, that we can say, oh, this is of God. That is a lot harder to conjure. And so it's
Mm,
because we're out of practice from being that person. And so I do see it as like testing. Okay, what leads me away from God and feeling like my true self? Let's look at that. And what helped me feel more like my true self, and like my identity is a child of God. What do I do? What do I think? What do I feel that allows me to feel more naturally that? And that's trial and error, to be honest. So a lot
mm,
of people make identity statements based off of, I guess, convenient ideas, things that, yeah, they're spoon fed by largely culture, like TikTok. I don't know, social media is a huge conduit for people's identity. But to test it is like the advantage of having a faith community or a group of other people, like a high noon group. That's what we want the
mm,
weekly groups to be, whether it's core radiant or ascend, is for that to be your place to test out who your true self is, and to ask for accountability when you fall off the wagon and you end up reverting back to your fake self. Because to me, it's like, okay, what's the relevance at this point in history of religion? It's really in question. Every time I go back to visit my family in Canada, Toronto, more and more churches are just converted into condos or like some hip new bar, right? And it's like, oh my God, people are running out of churches, right? And so, well, what's the relevance? Are we just post religion? And I don't think so. I think we so much need a religious community to test our identity. and you have to be a part of a healthy group of people, ideally, but you at least need other people to give you feedback when you're testing out being your ideal self, to help give you some sort of feedback, because otherwise we're just forced to kind of figure it out all by ourselves, and that's not how you come up with your identity, just like in your own head. It needs to actually be
Yeah.
practiced as well, right? But that comes with blessings and curses, because sometimes you're trying to be your true self and people are like, that's not who I want you to be. Like when I became religious, everybody in my life attacked me and said, you can't be religious, that's not who you are. I remember my best friend in the world said, you can't do this because you're the guy that always makes fun of God. And it's like, yeah, but I don't want to be that anymore. It's like, but you can't just switch sides, man. And I was like, but I have to. And he's like, he hasn't talked to me ever since, because that it just messed with him. And so it is, there are definitely religious communities that won't let you grow because they need you to be right. So it's not like a panacea, but you do need a group of people who have your best interest in mind and who will allow you to practice being your ideal self. And to me, like, that's the essence of the groups that we're trying to form in High Noon. Right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was a tirade. I apologize. That was like a
You good?
70-minute talk.
It's okay.
I got possessed. So
You're preaching.
it's a disease. How can we help people to feel invited to check their identity, test their identity? How do people do it in a healthy way instead of just throwing away their old identity? I mean, I think people have tried that. When you go from like a preppy to a goth or something like that, you have to change your choice of colors, your choice of music, and everything. It's pretty jarring, right? So then, how do you do it in a more reasonable kind of way? Like, have you guys ever done it? Have you ever clearly like challenged your identity and changed something?
I think people are afraid. I think people are afraid to challenge their identity by default because
Sure.
it's comfortable, because it's a
Sure.
belief. It's like, I believe this and that's what I believe. And that's why I believe it, because I believe it and that's comfortable. And so
Sure.
challenging a belief it's hard. It's really hard work, but it takes a certain level of self-awareness and wisdom to just be like, hey, I'm going to challenge this belief, not because I don't agree with it, just because I want to be stronger in it. I want to be stronger in this. And so for a lot of people in our world, it's things like belief in God, belief in the blessing, right? Belief in father and mother, two parents, belief in myself, for goodness sake. Like these are like fundamental buckets that I would recommend people try to even quantify a little bit. Like, to what extent do I really believe in this thing? Like, God is my heavenly parent and loves me dearly. If you ask me, honestly, most of the time I'm like 95% sure, like 99% sure God really loves me. But sometimes it fluctuates, when I'm feeling low, or I'm feeling I'm not seeing my value, or feeling like I'm beating myself up, or I'm feeling negative towards myself, or I feel like I'm failing. Times like those, I even question if God is with me, And so I think that all of these buckets of beliefs, they're different person to person, but I think we can kind of categorize and segment them and say, okay, how much do I really believe in this, and how much do I want to believe in it? And we've talked about this before, but belief is more of a decision than it is a thing that just happens. It really is. Mm-hmm. It's a decision. You just say that. Hey, buddy, is that Oseen?
I saw you anyway, buddy.
Nice. You're not hiding from anyone, Oseen. Yeah. So beliefs is like, I think, gosh, man, people are just waiting around, sitting on their hands, hoping that God will show themselves. God will show himself and be like, oh, sorry. Hey guys, I'm here. I've answered your prayers. I'm Almighty, Alpha, Omega. And the reality is that usually doesn't happen. It's more, we just have to decide, like, I want to be someone that believes in God. Why? Because I feel like a better person. I make better decisions. Sure. If I believe fundamentally that I'm loved unconditionally by an all-knowing, all-seeing entity in my life that is unconditional all the time, that makes me a happier person. Personally, I'm talking about myself. That makes me make better decisions. That makes me want to love my kids better, love my spouse better, love the people around me better. And so for me, it's like, I have honestly never questioned God's existence because I don't see the point in it personally. For me, it's just like, well, I'm a better person because of it. So I'm just going to keep doing that. I've never questioned it. It's never entered my mind.
So, are you saying
Can I just
that?
say something?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like way it's just all too relatable. But it's funny because what you were saying about people expecting God to show themselves, right? To like say, here I am. But at the same time, they spend 25 years, all their lives, really struggling with. They want to create this ideal, and they know that they want that ideal, right? For some reason, they want it, right? They haven't questioned it why, um, and they come to a Hainan program, and they're struggling with their sexual integrity, but they want the blessing, and so they know, right, that they're in this situation, and if they didn't believe in that ideal, right, if they didn't have faith in that ideal, they wouldn't be struggling with it. This wouldn't even be an issue, right? And so they
Mm.
don't realize that they actually believe in that. And so when I'm talking with them, I'm trying to make them recognize the reason you struggle is because you do believe. If you didn't believe in this whole thing, then you wouldn't have any problems with it. You would just be living out there your life without having any, emotional struggle about the fact that you are having a bad habit that doesn't really align with this ideal, right? So there is a faith that you're having there, that you have about the ideal of the blessing, about God, that you can't recognize, and they feel like they are not a good, I'm not a good person. I don't, I have a, weird relationship with God, whatever, all these things that are negative,
Yeah.
and they can't recognize that. At the same time, they're struggling because they do have a belief in that ideal, that they have decided to believe that, right? But they didn't make that last step of, I decide to do something about it. I decide to really own this ideal, right? They struggle a little bit with, is this my parents' belief? Is this my church's real belief? But actually, it's theirs as well, because if not, they wouldn't be coming to a program like I know that will challenge them to do something about it. So,
Hmm.
um, I I do agree with you. It's like it's definitely a decision, and sometimes they made a decision, but they haven't realized that they made that decision. And so
Yeah.
when they test these ideas,
Mm-hmm.
when we test them, when we challenge them, that's when they
Yeah.
realize, oh, actually,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. There was a brother that I was, in our community, and he's like, he went through some difficulties in his life, in his marriage, and then I met up with him one time, and he was like, Benji, I'm officially leaving the church. And I was like, dude, you left the church like a decade ago. I haven't seen you at church for like 10 years. And so, yeah, to your point, it's like he's already made the decision on what his beliefs are. And his actions have spoken louder than his words, in his own words. So I think that ultimately, also considering that people at a conscious level know when something is off. And case in
Mhm.
point, how many people, like teens, when they start, masturbating, watching porn, I have talked with multiple, probably a dozen or so men that say when the first time they masturbated, they knew something was off. Like they just felt like horrible. Like the feeling of like, this is not what I'm supposed to do with this energy. Like whatever this is not what it's supposed to be doing, just for this,
Mhm.
or watching porn. And I experienced that, firsthand too. When I was first masturbating, I was like, this feels off. And then over time, it kind of like desensitizes, and it kind of justification comes in. And also ultimately, there's no one for a lot of people to have the conversation, to have guidance about what is going on, and not shame them, and actually explain them, even congratulate them a little bit for having a sex drive, right? Not for masturbating, but just to be clear, uh, for growing up and having your body activated in that way. That's something that should be celebrated. Like, cool. That's what I tell my son. It's like, cool, like, awesome. You're curious. That's great. That's a good sign that you're going in the right direction. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I think conscious levels speaking, people know what is right, and if they don't feel that anymore, then there's usually some kind of blockage with their conscience, and that's what shadows do best. They block our conscience. They block our connection to God. They block us from feeling anything. from feeling emotions, from feeling that something is good or bad or right or wrong, and we just feel numb. And that's a shadow. That's what a shadow will do to you.
Yeah. And that's where identity comes again.
Well, it's before Benji. You were saying it sounded like you were saying that the identity, while you're forging your identity and figuring out who you are and all this, it largely should be connected to the results that you want, right? Like if you identify as somebody who will never have kids, but you want kids, then there's something amiss, right? And so it's kind of also maybe not that being the only metric of like what you want, but that it is a factor in terms of your identity.
Mm-hmm.
Is if you want to identify as an angry emo person, but you also want a family, that's probably not congruent, right? And so to be like, well, maybe I can adjust my identity a little bit to be a little bit more amiable and enjoyable to be around, so that I can have a partner throughout my life who will want to be with me, so that I can have kids that won't hate me because I'm a miserable person, right? So let's say like that, because a lot of people honestly don't like themselves, because they base their view of themselves on a performance. Like I do this, therefore I don't like myself. I watch porn, so I hate myself, right? Because I'm a weak person. And so now you're giving yourself a performance review, but you're not reviewing the performance, you're the whole individual. So imagine you show up to work and you've been lazy at work and your boss is like, you shouldn't be alive because you haven't been doing your job well. You should just stop existing. Like that's crazy and abusive, but we do that to ourselves all the time. It's like, I haven't been performing well in life, so I as an entity suck and I'm not worthy of love because I haven't been doing good stuff. And so instead you have to definitely separate your identity from your performance, and you have to that's where it does really help to have some sort of identity based in something greater than yourself, so God. And if there is a loving God, then that's where you came from, right? And so and if it doesn't take a lot of imagination to imagine that to be exactly true, our bodies physiologically perform at such a high level when we're filled with love. When we're filled with good emotions, we have better thoughts, our heart functions better. When we're filled with sadness, depression, anxiety, our bodies get super sick and our minds are distracted, our hearts are distracted. It's a disaster. So when you look at, okay, maybe I come from this place that is designed to be loved and loving, start to base your identity on that. And maybe I'm not acting this way, but I can, right? It's more like that's the North Star goal aspect of like, just because you haven't been a certain way, your identity has been the opposite of what you want. It doesn't mean you have to stay stuck like that. It's just trying to see, you don't have to see the perfect version of yourself. It's just, what would be an upgrade? What would be the next logical upgrade to be closer to being my true self? And that's a more loving, loved person, who acts accordingly. So, but I do like that, Benji, of this idea that it should be connected to outcomes as well, that they're definitely not mutually exclusive. They're entwined in some way. Yeah, Araceli, did we miss anything? Have you been obsessing about this and we haven't touched on anything that you want to touch on?
No, I think we touched on everything, and how that this allows people to challenge their identity and reaffirm who they are if they already know who they are. And yeah, I think we covered everything. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a fantastic follow-up episode to the one that Sammy and I did about story work, because the whole premise of story work is that we seldom, if ever, most people never look at their stories in their mind about where they came from, who they are, their childhood. They have a lot of blank parts that they fill in, the gaps that they fill in, and we don't write it down. And you realize like, oh, I don't remember a lot of these details, but we have this deep visceral emotional reaction. And in a lot of cases, they've studied this. Half of our memories are fake. Half of our memories are either we just made stuff up, or we had a dream one time that became reality, or we mix up people in our stories and we just kind of clump them all together. So it's like if half of what we remember is not even true, and we attach emotional, qualities to our memories, like, oh, my childhood was like this, half of that isn't even true. And then that becomes our identity, is like, oh, I'm this person with this thing. It's like, well, you're missing a lot of information here. Then it's really important that people understand their stories, and that's story work. Listen to that episode if you haven't. And then identities, they're deeply connected. If you want to change your life, you also have to change your identity from somebody who watches porn and masturbation to somebody who doesn't. And that's a hard leap for people, because even I'm sure, Ellie, you've seen this with your mentees or people in your world. People who start doing well a lot of times will run back to porn because they don't even know how to handle doing well. Because it means like, wait a second, do I have to leave porn? I didn't know that was a part of this deal. I was like, that's why you sign up for this, man. You don't need it anymore. And they're like, but I know I don't like it and I don't want it, but I kind of need it because that's all I know. It's been part of my identity. It's like, yeah, it's time to let it go. That's it. It's identity shift, and it's scary because it means being a different version of you. Have you guys seen that phenomena?
Self-sabotage. Yeah. That's what it's called. And like, people self-sabotage when things get uncomfortable and they don't know how to deal with discomfort. So
even when the discomfort is something like joy, it's like, I don't know how to be joyful. This is scary. I want to throw it all away.
They don't trust it.
It's crazy. It's really crazy. But so I think this is a great conversation, and everybody, this is the high noon world, right? Is figuring out where you came from and how you ended up in where you are. And then in order to move forward, you have to resolve the past. You have to like really work on that. You can't just ignore it. You can't just focus on it, but you can't just ignore it. You got to work on it. And then in order to identify it as a heavenly creature, specimen, it's important that you figure out what your identity actually is and start to curate that based on what will yield the best possible results for your own life. So thank you, Araceli. This is Benji and I never would have had this conversation without you. You brought up some really great stuff. Thank you for bringing this to our high noon world.
Yeah, thank you for listening and also responding.
Everybody, pray for Araceli's baby, and her. Prayers matter.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.